So today I want to talk to you about the fantasy characters, especially villains that I hate more than anything, okay? And you see, these villains will have one thing in common, okay? They'll have one thing in common. I will not say what that is, but I want you to go down in the comments below, and I want you to tell me, what that thing is. So let's talk about Wizard's first rule, especially the Darken Ral, right? The Dark Lord, the guy who has literally Darken in his name, okay? Darken Ral is the main antagonist of actually Sword of Truth, and especially to the point where I read, which is the end of the first book. That's where I stopped. I'm not a crazy man. I'm not gonna finish the entire story. Darken Ral is terrible. Darken Ral is the definition of a terrible villain, because he is he has Darken in his name. He's a Dark Lord, and he's outlandishly evil. And you see, there are so many monologues in the story. There are so many attempts to have discussions around morality in this story, but so many times, because of the way Darken Ral is outlandishly evil, I do not really engage with the moral discussion that is being had in the story. You know why? Because I can blame all the problems in the story on Darken Ral. You see, this is the main issue with outlandishly evil Dark Lords and villains in general, because they are really not engaging in any way whatsoever. You just try to read them, you try to engage with the story, but you really don't engage with the story in any way, because guess what? You have this villain that is so awful that you can blame all the problems in the story on them. So how is it engaging in any way? That's the question to ask. And so a lot of authors don't know how to answer this question. So a lot of hack authors publish books that have Darkened Rals, or they have, outlandishly evil Dark Lords. Another thing is that he is secretly the son of the protagonist, Richard Cypher. And this leads to a Star Wars moment. I am your son. Terry Goodkind has claimed many times that he does not just write fantasy, that his stories are unique in the fantasy genre. And number two, that he doesn't just write about, characters, he writes about humans. First of all, you write about archetypes. Archetypes are the definition of boring characters who have no life in them, because so many people have done them that way countless eons. Number two, you have a lot of generic characters, as is evident by the reality that you have literally Darken in the name of your main villain, okay? Your main flagship villain, Darken Ral, has Darken in his name. He's a Dark Lord. Anyhow, that is my most hated fantasy villain, because he is so terribly written and so terribly constructed that there is no redeemable quality. Let's talk about the fifth Sorceress, which is Chronicles of Blood and Stone, written by Robert Newcomb. And this is the first book I read, and I stopped because I'm not a crazy man. Again, remember, I have a heart, I have a brain, and I have stamina. I can be exhausted quickly. So yeah, much like Darken Ral, the Coven of Sorceresses from, Fifth Sorceress, what they do and what they want is actually world domination, okay? I really love it when the main Dark Lord wants to dominate the world, and they don't push the protagonist in any way or attack them directly in any way that would result in the protagonist having interesting character development. Anyway, the Coven of Sorceresses is awful. They are not interesting. And then let's talk about how they are super violent. There's so much sexual violence in this story. The protagonist gets raped twice. And number two, there's so much, the aesthetics and the way they look and the way they walk, it's so overdone, and there's so much fetishization, whatever it is, okay, whatever the word is. So those are actually my two most hated villains, or groups of villains, in the entirety of the fantasy genre, okay? Tell me down in the comments below what you think are your two most hated, or 3, 5, whatever number you have, in the comments below, okay? Have a nice day.